2023 AD, the regional director of the International Committee of the Red Cross for the Near and Middle East published a statement that said in the following terms: "With the power outage in Gaza, hospitals will lose their power source, endangering the lives of newborns in incubators and elderly patients who depend on supplies oxygen. Kidney dialysis services will also stop. It will not be possible to perform a Chinese X-ray without electricity." Face. Dangerous hospitals turned into morgues. Families in Gaza are already suffering from difficulty in obtaining clean water, and no father or mother can bear to give his thirsty child contaminated water. This was said approximately 5 days after the start of the Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip. The situation at this time is much worse with each passing day in the Strip. Without obtaining the minimum amount of electricity it needs, the lives of more than 2,000 people are at serious risk. Does the Gaza Strip currently have a problem with electricity? The quick answer to the question says that the Israeli occupation provides the Strip with the largest portion of its electricity consumption. It decided to cut off electricity supplies to Gaza. On October 7th, the Israelis, in the words of their defense minister Joe Grande, decided to place Gaza under a complete siege, with no electricity, no food, and no fuel. But this situation calls for a second question. Why does Gaza depend so heavily on Israeli electricity in the first place? Is not only a legitimate question, but a very important question that deserves an answer, especially since in theory the Palestinians, and especially the people of the Gaza Strip, have the resources that allow them to be self-sufficient and produce their own electricity without relying on anyone. But this does not happen in reality. Why not? This is the question that we will try to answer in today's episode, in which we will try to capture a quick look at the Israeli occupation's control over the Palestinians' resources and depriving them of them. The Israeli occupation occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and remained under complete control until the Oslo Accords took place in the 1990s, according to which the Palestinian National Authority was established, which was granted partial sovereignty over some areas in the West Bank in addition to the Gaza Strip, the most important of which is the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. At this time, Gaza was suffering from a severe shortage of electricity. Or did they have any power generation station inside the Strip? This is a situation that the Palestinians tried to change at the end of the 90s. In the year 1999, the Palestinian billionaire Saeed Khouri, head of the United Contractors Company, entered into a partnership with the energy company, American Enron, to build the first power plant in the Gaza Strip. The project was a combined cycle power plant with a capacity of 136 megawatts. I did not. The man who was leading the project was unable to complete it because it declared bankruptcy, and it collapsed at the end of 2001 after its famous accounting scandal. The collapse of Enron threatened the Gaza Station project, which could not have been completed, but Saeed Khouri was determined to complete it. Through his company, the Contractors Union, he bought Enron's share and continued. Work on building the station actually began operating in the year 2003, a year and a half after the original date. This was because the construction process was halted in half for political reasons. The plan was for the station to initially operate with fuel and then be converted to natural gas at some point in the future. Natural gas is of course more efficient and causes less air pollution. And most importantly, it is much cheaper than the fuel that was supplied by the Israeli company Alon to the occupied Palestinian territories at very high prices as of 1994. In this context is that in 1999, the Consolidated Contractors Company contacted the British company British Gas, which was operating at that time in the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, in order to agree with it to purchase Egyptian gas so that the Gaza power station would be operated in the future. Here is the group in British Gas responded to the Contractors Union and announced that you own natural gas off the coast of the Gaza Strip. Studies of our own say that there are quantities of gas present off the coast of the Gaza Strip, and this is something we discovered during our work in Sina in November 1999. British Gas and the Contractors Union signed a 25-year contract with the late Palestinian President Yasser Arafat in order to obtain the rights to explore for oil and gas, and the British company began exploring for gas off the coast of the Gaza Strip within 20 miles of the coast. The agreement gave the Palestinians maritime jurisdiction over the area of Maya, and this, in turn, gave the Palestinians economic sovereignty over any resources they found in this area. The Israelis, in particular, the Israeli private sector, tried to obstruct the Palestinian efforts in this direction. In the year 2000, the Israeli Yam Thetis Alliance, consisting of Noble Energy and Deled Group, which were also drilling gas fields off the occupied Palestinian coast, submitted a petition to the Israeli Supreme Court requesting that it prevent the Palestinians from exploring for gas off their coast in the Gaza Strip. And the argument presented by the Israeli alliance. The court stated that the Palestinian Authority is not a sovereign government and therefore does not have the judicial that would enable it to grant exploration rights to British gas. But the court did not respond to this petition in line with the Israeli government's decision. The Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Ehud Barak, gave the green light to British gas to begin drilling off the coast of Gaza. Year 2000 British Gas CE. They found natural gas in an exploratory well they called Gaza Marine 1. And after that, they found gas in a second exploratory well they called Gaza Marine 2. Initial results indicated that the two wells contained more than 1 trillion cubic meters of high-quality natural gas, according to statements by the head of BG. The quantities of gas discovered were sufficient to meet the Palestinian demand for gas, and the rest was exported according to conservative estimates at the time from Gaza Marine, and that 1 unit was sufficient to meet the Palestinians' needs for electricity for a period ranging from 10 to 20 years. On September 27th, the late President Yasser Arafat visited the gas platform located off the coast of Gaza. There he celebrated the unprecedented discoveries, saying at the time that they were a gift from God to the Palestinian people. Next day, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and Hatem stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque under the protection of the Israeli police. This visit sparked the second Palestinian Intifada, which continued until 2005. Under the Intifada, the Palestinian gas project was negatively affected. First, British gas was in trouble. This is despite the fact that the fields that were discovered are off the coast of Gaza. There were quantities of gas that were economically viable, except for a major obstacle, which was that the Palestinian demand for gas at that time was not great. Therefore, he needed buyers to buy gas with the Palestinians. Israelis were the most prominent candidates as the occupiers of the lands close to the Gaza fields, and therefore transferring gas to them would be easy, cheaper, and beneficial. On this basis, British Gas entered into negotiations with the Israeli government in order to purchase part of the gas that will be produced in the natural gas fields in Gaza. But in 2001, Ariel Sharon completely rejected any purchase of this Palestinian gas because he understood that this step would prevent British gas from accessing the fields, Gaza for the production stage, and consequently the Palestinians will be deprived, firstly, of gas, and secondly, of billions of dollars in expected revenues from these fields. In May 2002, under pressure from British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Ariel Sharon negotiations again with British Gas for Palestinian gas, but he retracted his words in 2003, thinking that the money that the Israeli government would pay to the Palestinians as price for their gas could go to terrorist activities. This is, of course, nonsense, because all the negotiations revolved around transferring the money to a private account subject to international monitoring for use in international aid in the face of Israeli intransigence. British Gas thought about selling gas to the second neighbor, Egypt, but the idea did not succeed. Ariel Sharon left the Israeli government in 2006, and exactly a year later, specifically in April 2007, the new Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert decided to resume negotiations with British Gas regarding a contract under which the Israelis would buy 50 billion cubic meters of Palestinian gas in exchange for $4 billion annually, starting in 2009. This contract will be $2 billion, of which $1 billion will go to the Palestinians, but the negotiations collapsed after Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip in June 2007. Hamas, on the one hand, had a desire to improve the terms of the negotiations so that the Palestinians had a greater share of its gas revenues, and the Israelis, on the other hand, had a desire to improve the terms of the negotiations. On the other hand, they began negotiating directly with British Gas. In the absence of the Palestinians on a plan other than the original plan, their idea was simply that the Palestinians would not take money and the price of the gas would be transformed into Israeli goods and services. And this, of course, was rejected by the Palestinians. The second reason that contributed to the failure of the negotiations was the Israeli incursion into the Palestinians' rights to their waters. The Oslo Accords gave the Palestinians economic sovereignty over 20 nautical miles off their coasts. In 2002, as part of the Bernie Agreement, the distance was reduced by 12 nautical miles. And then, when Hamas won the elections in January 2006, the Israelis reduced the distance to only 6 miles, and then they reduced it to 3 miles in the context of the Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip in December 2008. Under these complex circumstances, the company decided British Gas announced in December 2007 that they would withdraw from the negotiations. In January 2008, they closed their office in the occupied Palestinian territories. However, they still have the right to concession in the Gaza fields. The Israeli government returned to negotiate with them in 2013, but the negotiations failed. Israeli intransigence in the negotiations is the main reason that the Gaza fields have not been utilized to this time, because it is assumed that the gas will be transported. A pipeline from the fields off the coast of Gaza and transporting it under the sea until it reaches Ashkelon. And there, after the Israelis take their share, they send their share of gas to the Gaza Strip, in addition, of course, to the price. Gas. The situation in Gaza was the day before October 7th as follows: severe electricity shortage. It leaves the people of Gaza without electricity for long hours. The electricity that the people of Gaza consume comes from two sources. The first source, which everyone knows, is the Gaza power station, which is still running on fuel. It never converted to natural gas as it was planned when it was built. The important thing is that this station's recent capacity was 60 megawatts. The second source of electricity in Gaza are 10 power lines from the occupied territories. These lines have a capacity of 120 megawatts. When the war began on October 7th, the Israelis stopped the power lines. Same day, the Gaza Electricity Company issued a statement in which it announced that the Strip is currently dependent on the Gaza power station only, and that the rate of electrical deficit in the Strip has reached 80%, and that electricity supply decreased to 4 hours per day. The situation is bad, of course, these days, after the fuel stocks that operate the Gaza power station ran out. And this is in light of the Israelis preventing the passage of fuel shipments that were entering Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing. The absence of electricity from the Gaza Strip threatens the lives of more than 2,000 people who are besieged. There is a siege. It is inhumane and has no parallel in the world. This is happening at the same time to the residents of Gaza who own, directly in front of their coast, enormous wealth that can satisfy their electricity needs and eliminate their dependence on the Israelis, while at the same time providing them with a source of income that helps them develop its infrastructure, which has been targeted by the occupation all this time. The Israelis are keen to prevent the residents of Gaza from benefiting from their gas wealth, so that dependence on them remains obligatory, with their ability to